Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Rahul Patel. Thanks for being on the show, Rahul.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I was pleased to hear him speak at an event just a few months ago now in Tampa, and I knew he was going to be a great guest. And Rahul, thanks again for being on the show. And a little about him: he's an attorney, licensed MBA agent, real estate developer, professor, speaker, and serial entrepreneur. Most commonly known as the managing partner of Patel Gaines, the fifth fastest growing law firm in the nation, where he represents over $8.5 billion in commercial property. He's been featured in USA Today, Forbes, Fortune, Businessweek, Texas Lawyer, and the Business Journal, where he was named Man of the Year, an outstanding lawyer, and a 40 under 40. Rahul, thanks again for your time and just sharing your expertise and experience with the listeners. Give them a little bit more about just who you are, and let's dive into some of these important things that we need to know in the syndication business from an attorney standpoint.
Awesome. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so give the listeners a little bit more about just who you are, in case they haven't heard of you before, and let's dive in.
Sure. So it's interesting enough. My first job as an attorney. So I was in the real estate business before I went to law school. Got into the hospitality business, the hotel business. Did development there, so I know all about multifamily world and the hospitality world have a lot of similarities in essence. So got kind of cut my teeth there and went to law school. And ironically, the job I took, one of the first big cases we got involved in was an owner who had about $700 million worth of multifamily property that were tax credit deals. So they were LITHC, which are low income tax housing credit deals, and they were complex deals. And they got into a dispute over the tax worthiness of their projects, and that's how I got into it. And ironically, we've been doing a lot of multifamily. Probably have about close to about 5 to 6 billion in San Antonio or South Texas that we represent. Property tax purposes, transactionally, multifamily has just been great, at least for the Texas market in general. That's where we're from, has been hot, right? And so got into the tax space. Always been in the real estate space, and right now our firm helps, from front to end. Lots of things that come up in the multifamily business. So,
great. No, thanks again, Rahul. And I'd like for us to get into some things you're seeing now in the industry, maybe some problems you see that are happening time and time again, or maybe some things we haven't thought of as far as whether it's structuring our deals or maybe just what all is involved in making a deal successful. From your line of work and something as simple as are we allowing enough time, or is it structured correctly, and just from some things that you're seeing now in the industry.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the good. The market is still really, really good, right? And I think that in general for multifamily, the market is still very strong. We're seeing lots of transactions, lots of activity. Lenders have not shied away from the ability to do deals within this space. So let's talk about the good. I think it's there. Second, I think, from a positive standpoint, people's lifestyle requirements, needs, as a country, as a generation evolve, has also changed. So we talk about the millennial, we talk about the young working person now and the young working family. Their needs have also changed. You grew up with the dream of, house, big, long, white picket fence, right? That's the story of the American dream. That has also changed. People are working from home. People are working remote. People are looking for less tie down in their house and looking for their capital to be used in other ways. So, I think that bodes well for the multifamily space, because you can allow for creation of communities, epicenters of these things where people are now saying, well, I don't want to live, in just a house in a community and drive an hour to work. So I think from the good, there's a lot of good, right? From some of the problems, just like anything, right? When there's a period of very, very good growth in something, you really have to be careful of the problems that are going to be either swept under the rug, if that makes sense, by an industry, not by anyone individually, but as an industry that you don't see. Also trends that you're not watching from a backwards looking standpoint. You're often looking forward, but you're also saying, well, how much new supply has come on? How much Class C property has had, when they've been upgraded, have they seen the ticks that they sold, right? So if you said, hey, we're going to take a 1960s product, we're going to dump $1 million into it, turn it into a Class B minus product, and now the revenue should go up. Has anyone actually spent the time to study some of those things? And you'll start to see some trends there. So when you talk about problems, I look at them as not really problems, not as, oh my God, what do we do? More or less of ways to, I would say, to improve or separate yourself from those that might be saying, well, it's too hot of a market. So I don't want to overpay. Well, you may not have to overpay. You may see some opportunities or someone overshot their opportunity. So problems I see is I think that the prices for many assets and what it's taking to get a deal under contract is significantly changing. That's creating problems for folks like our team, who's often challenged with really making it all come together when you've got complex layers. This isn't like buying a home, right? Where you find one, you put a down payment, and then you get someone to lend you money on it and you close. Simple process. In this, there are so many different pieces coming into play. We've got partners, we've got investors, we've got operating folks, we've got multiple sometimes pieces of financing. There's private financing, then we have a bank, or you have Fannie, and then you have deals that you've struck with your investors that your lender is saying, it's not gonna work. This is how it's gonna work. This is the structure. This is what we demand. These are the reserves we want. So folks are running into problems because as we believe the market might be changing, so have the lenders. They haven't run away, but they're also saying, well, now we might want to put a little more reserve, or they have been the first to learn, possibly in some instances, where there can be some areas where they can be more protected. So where we're seeing some problems is the deals there's a lot of competition. And when there's competition, there's two things. You either are the big fish that has the ability to get those deals, or two, you're over-promising and trying to figure out backwards how to get it done. And I'm seeing a lot of that trend. Get a deal under contract, we'll figure this out later. That doesn't always work when you have complex items that you have to do. 60-day close, your lender right now, for crowdfunding type deals or anything that smells of crowdfunding, Fannie Mae, you're not even gonna get on the review block in that time frame. So how in the world can you expect to close? So those are some of the problems, and I'll stop, give you a chance, but just kind of talking through.
No, that's some really good stuff, some really good points, and I like to, just talking about the competition in the market, how that changes things and how that affects, the deals that you think you have. It makes those deals kind of artificially more valuable, right? Is the value really there? Well, maybe not, but however, somebody else is willing to pay this much, so you're willing to pay a little more, you get a little emotional, and now all of a sudden you're paying way too much for this deal that you think is a deal, but really it's stemmed from the competition in the market.
Yep, I agree. I think that's a big driving force right now is folks that really want to win a deal. And, in some instances, we're in a little bit of that era where folks have seen how much profits have been there. They've seen the cap rates, they've seen the trading. So they're like, it doesn't matter, we'll win the deal and we'll maybe make less, even though we're shooting for this, we'll make less, but it's okay because in 12 months we'll be out. But what if you're not out in 12 months, right? So does that still make sense if option A goes away, which it could, right? Which it could go away overnight. The Fed could make a decision, it could go away overnight. Housing market could crash, and you say, well, that can't happen. It could. All it's going to take is, simple as a declaration of war, and now we've got a housing market shift. And now, why would you stay in an apartment for $1,800 a month when you can buy a 3,000 square foot home possibly for the same price, right?
Right.
So I think really, the competition has, in my opinion, has separated a lot. It's separated those that know the deal, know what it's going to take for it to work up or down, and those that are saying, this will make it work in a perfect world. But we don't live in a perfect world, so you have to balance the desire to be aggressive versus also make sure it's a sound financial decision, because this isn't 50 grand, this is millions of dollars.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Of other people's money. That's right.
With a lot of back end requirements, if that makes sense. You could buy, you buy a pair of pants that were overpriced. They're paid for. They're yours, right? Or you buy an apartment complex and you put $2 million of equity into it. You owe another 8, right? Another 8, which there's a lot of responsibility there that comes with it.
Yes. Yes. So, let's move into like some of the maybe problems with structuring deals, or maybe some things you see right now that are people are making mistakes on.
I think the biggest problem that people are making deals on, they're structuring deals without actually understanding what they're lending to. So you understand the equity component, right? Very easy. Like I need X probably percentage-wise. If I'm a $10 million project, for example, let's use that as our example point. And let's say we need to have $2 million of equity. That's very easy, okay? You just know what you need. The problem is the $8 million. The $8 million that you need comes with quote unquote strings. And what I mean by strings is if I'm gonna give you 8 and you need it, guess what? They're gonna be on my terms. So now, Whitney, I need you to set up a single purpose entity that's out of Delaware. Whitney, I need a springing member. Hey, I need 6% reserves versus 4. I need XYZ. And you have already made a set of promises to your 2 million, which, no offense, but your 2 million doesn't win. Your 8 million, the guy that bring in the 8 million, the bank, they are winning that conversation. And not that isn't a problem or isn't something that comes up in every walk of life. The issue is the deals that we're seeing, because it's such a competitive market, people are putting hundreds, if not sometimes millions of dollars in earnest money hard and expecting to close very quickly by making that their deal point. They're enticing the seller by saying, don't worry, we're gonna close in 60 days. I got the $2 million in my bank account. Do not worry. And so from the seller standpoint, it's like, okay, what does it matter to me? I've got a contract, you don't close, I get $500,000 earnest money. The problem is they have not understood when they can close. So I always ask clients, have you closed the deal from beginning to end in 60 days without an extension? Do you have a team in place? Do you have a transaction manager? Do you have a due diligence manager who's doing those things? And you'll find out that a lot of times folks that don't have several holes in their belt, right, haven't expanded and shrunk, so they don't really know how to get fat, how to get lean again. They just put them on for the first time or the second time. And it creates lots of stress, lots of anxiety, lots of calls, and ultimately they'll spend 3, 4, 5 times more in fees just trying to get the deal closed. Does that make sense?
It does. And I really like the point you made there about, enticing a seller by, making promises to close quickly before you understand the requirements of the lender.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that could be such a deal breaker. And here you've already put the money hard, and guess what? It's gone.
People are working backwards. Because of the franticness of it, people are literally working backwards. They are not taking a project, talking to a lender about it and say, hey, I'm about to put this deal in a contract. What are your thoughts? This is my guys. This is what my structure looks like. Can you give me some feedback? They're just saying, figure it out later. Does that make sense? Like, book the ticket, get to San Antonio, and then we'll figure out where we're gonna stay, where we're gonna eat. We're gonna do all that later. And I would say 3 years ago, easy. Today, the climate has changed. The lenders are being a lot more, what I would say they have the upper side because they're the ones giving the money out, and they're also the ones sensing some change in the market. And so they're seeing, because of so many competition, so many deals, that they don't have to just chase lend on any deal. They can lend on the ones they want to as well. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I mean, they're supplying 80%, of the capital. So I can understand, and everybody should understand why they can really call the shots.
I agree.
So yeah, so just some great points you made there, enticing the seller before we understand the requirements of the lender, and just the franticness in the space. When you're trying to get a deal closed, that we end up working backwards and not really thinking through that process. And just how the lender controls the deal almost, because they understand. What was it you said? They really understand. They're sensing the change in the market and things like that. But go ahead, just problems.
I think my biggest challenge, and it comes down to kind of like your personal kind of aura, how you do things. And my philosophy of things is I would much prefer to tell you from the beginning, Whitney, I'm going to put this deal in a contract for 60 days, but I have a feeling it's going to take me 120 days. So what are your thoughts about that? And what's that going to look like? And you're going to say, there's a chance, Rahul, that we're going to close in 120 days because in day 91, I'm in France and I'm not going to be back and I'm not closing this deal and I'm not going to France without this deal closed. Or I've got a loan that needs to be refinanced by November and I got plenty of time, or I don't, right? I got to make a decision. So I think my personality is of the mindset that I always, if I can work with someone that's going to be transparent, that's going to be our number one choice. If they will not, sometimes we don't take those deals on our end because now I'm under a pressure of something that I know cannot get done, right? Like, I mean, if there is a sniff of a crowdfunding deal and a Fannie deal right now, you're not going to get done in 60 days. Doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter. You can have a seasoned team. You're probably not going to get done in 60 days. Not because you can't get everything structured and documents ready to go. You got to get someone at Fannie to sign off on it. And that's not going to happen in 60 days. So, I think the reality of it is making sure that you're transparent from the beginning because it'll allow for a lot less headache down the road of timing and needs and what you need in order to get it done. And I think people are fearful that they're going to lose the deal by having that conversation. And I'm of the mindset that you're going to lose it anyways, because you're better off doing that today than at day 58 going, hey, Whitney, dude, I need another 2 months. And you're going to say, no. Or you're going to say, okay, but I want another $500,000 hard and a price is $500,000 hard released today. Now how do I negotiate with you at day 58 when I've already spent 30 grand, 100 grand, whatever it might be, seeing the deal with lawyers, with documents, all the countless hours? What do? I'm stuck, as opposed to having bought in beginning. And if the seller wasn't going to give you an extension, well, then he wasn't going to give you one on day 58. So at the onset, does that make sense?
Yes.
So why do that today? I'd much rather say, okay, let's buy an extension from the beginning. So some of those types of things that I talk about that some folks just don't want to hear. They genuinely live in the world of perfection, and I believe that you can achieve perfection. And if you are one that has, and you've got a team, you've got the right experience, easily can be done because they set the target right from the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like we don't have an LOI that's presented to us that is not possible, right? And we see that all the time. Executed LOIs, you look at this and go, how is this possible? Like, you can't even structure a deal that way. The lender will never let you do that. And they're like, well, this is what we sold our equity investors. Like, well, you can sell them all you want, but that's not going to happen. You need to go back now, call each one of them and explain to them that this deal is going to change, which is now bad on you, if that makes sense.
Yes, you're having to go back and unpromise what you've already promised, or
repromise.
Repromise. That's right.
Hey there, Brandon Hall here, CEO of the Real Estate CPA. If you're like many active syndicators, you're probably getting taxed hard on the earnings you make as a general partner, specifically related to acquisition fees and asset management fees. You see, these earnings are subject to self-employment taxes, resulting in a 15.3% tax on top of the marginal taxes that you already pay. That's a lot of tax. There's no need to pay more tax than necessary, so join us at one of our free virtual workshops to learn how to structure your syndication business in order to minimize your exposure to self-employment taxes. This offer is only available to listeners of the Real Estate Syndication Show. Seats are limited. Sign up today by visiting www.therealestatecpa.com/syndication.
So how can we keep that from happening? How can we be as prepared as possible, when we're structuring the deals, or just, what all is involved to, making this deal as successful as possible?
Number one, before you go and chase a deal, figure out who and how you possibly are going to get your money from. You're not your equity, but your debt from. That's the number one component, I say. If you're buying, this isn't even rocket science compared to most things. If you have perfect credit and a six-figure salary, perfect credit, no debt, and a six-figure salary, you can go buy any home you want, that within reason, right? You don't have to worry too much. But if there's any segment where you might be operating at the A- or B+, the first thing that any home buyer should do, regardless of where you are, is go find out how much you got approved for, right? Go to the bank, give them your financials, give them your W-2s, give them everything you have, and then guess what? They'll tell you what they're going to pre-approve you for, right? So now you set your target right. So my number one statement would be is who is your Rolodex of people, not just based on, hey, I got a business card from this guy, right? And I got this card, and when I need something, I'll call him. No, have a conversation. What is their lending limits? How are their deals structured? How long does it take for them to fund and close a deal? What support are they going to provide on those things? Are you committed to me based on my financials and on my background check? Do you want to do some checks on me first to make sure that we're good? Now you've got 2 or 3 of those business cards in your pocket, and the seasoned buyers already have those. So if you're new, you might want to make sure which card you want versus which card is going to have to be thrown away in the garbage because it's not going to mean anything to you. You will chase 30 days, 45 days chasing a lender that has no ability to close for you either. And that's a flip side to that. There are a lot of guys that are brokering money deals, right? Brokering finance deals for you that have no ability to probably get you that deal done, or they don't even have real seriousness in this. So you're also looking at it buyer seller, but there's a party out here that's trying to bring you the money, which may or may not happen. So my first priority would be tie that down. Now, obviously they're going to say, well, without a deal, how will I know? You will know. You will know some information that's very critical about how then you can set up loosely your structure. Your LOI should now have some more form to it because you're going to know what you need. You're also going to know what your lender is going to ask for because they've told you. So now in your due diligence, you're asking and seeking the right things. Then you go there, right? And we are oftentimes literally working backwards because now they say, well, I can't go back on my word because that's what I signed on the LOI. I'm going to say, well, that's not going to happen. So who has to be the bad guy now? Me? I got to make the call. And oftentimes that's what we have to do. I have to end up making the call. Does that make sense?
It does. No, I like, you just said, by going to the lender, going through the process that way, you're not wasting time when the clock is ticking, that 60 days, 90 days is clicking. You're not wasting time trying to figure out who your lender is going to be and wasting time with somebody who's not willing to work with you anyway.
That's right. So my question to you is, if you've worked, how many times have you, as a guy putting a deal together, have you had conversations with a possible investor that hasn't worked out? Do you have 100% close rate with that guy for the check for $100,000? And if your answer to that is yes, then go ahead. But if your answer to that is no, it's not 100% close rate, then guess what? Your lender has the exact same answer to you. This is, we will not fund any and every deal. That you might go in and go, no way, that's not happening, or it's not happening on the terms of it, right? And so you lock that up, and here's the other thing, that will give you strength in negotiation, not by strength of price and time is where people tend to be leading with negotiation. In all reality, what I should say is, hey, Whitney, these 3 other guys that put in this offer for $18 million, $2 million above me, there's not a chance that they close. Have they closed? No. Have they done deals before? Kind of, but not really. I've got commitment in hand for 16 because they've underwritten the project and saying that's all they're going to give me. And so therefore, even though mine might be lower and mine might take more time, I have actually I'm prepared to do this. So you can spend 60 days with this guy and get nowhere and get 100 grand hard money, or you can go 95 days or 120 days with me, but actually close your deal. Which one do you want? And so your strategy actually is so much stronger and so people just lead with more money in quicker time all the time. I can sense that as a rookie. Anytime a new deal maker, I call the Instagrammer, the Facebooker, that you can spot in a heartbeat. And if I can spot it, so can everybody else. Does that make sense?
It does.
And it works. And it works a lot of times.
Yeah, and being realistic. Somebody that's being realistic, that shows they have some experience. Realistic, about allowing enough time. Hey, Rahul, this is, most likely, I mean, just from our previous experience, we know this is going to take us at least 90 days. Is that something you're open to? Yeah, that's awesome.
And it comes with the credibility. This is here's why. Here's the reasons.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm not wasting 90 days of your time, and you're not wasting 90 days of my time, because I actually want to buy the thing. I've done all of this due diligence homework to buy it. This guy is shooting for the moon, and chances are you never land there. So if you want to do that, go right ahead. But if this deal will work based on these reasons, and in my opinion, that always tends to work better. Even if the deal doesn't happen, it works better because you don't spend 60 days on a deal that never worked and now have to retrack and scramble. Instead, you were focusing on a 90-day or 120. And we've been using the time deal. That's just one example, right? One example. Lots of things come up in a series of a transaction that you need to know and have the ability to understand what may come up.
Yes. And so, Rahul, what about, after we get that deal closed or we've done a few deals, what else should we be thinking about to make sure we're just on track to being successful, going forward?
I think the thing to be successful is you look at where you are, right? And so if you're a multiple deal person, regardless of where it is, your first deal is the hardest. Second deal becomes a little bit easier. What I would say is wherever you are, stop and give yourself a check now. So whether you're 2 deals in or 12 deals in or 50 deals in, regardless of where you are, you should take a moment, like every instance where you are, to check and reevaluate and say, okay, these are the 2 I closed. Before, I see too often people go to the third because the deal chasing is fun. It's the best. It's the most thrill part of it, right? To toast champagne, you close the deal, put one under contract, smoke a cigar. That's like the best part of all of this stuff sometimes. But don't forget why you bought that. Are you getting 20% returns? Did you get the rehab project done in time? Are you holding the reserves that you needed? Are your investors getting paid on time? Do you have enough? Is this project getting all the attention it needs? Is the management company right? So my advice is wherever you are is stop, take a breather, and reflect on what you've done, because here's 2 things that can happen. You might realize that you need to spend more time on what you've already done. And second, you might also realize that the deal that you thought was maybe the least profitable for you might end up being your best profitable one. And the one that you thought was the most might be the most problem child. So history tells us a lot, right? It usually does. And history always tends to find its way forward. So what I always say is same thing with your own history. It should help you find your way forward. So whether you're 1 deal in or 2 deals in or 30, you should stop and say, okay, what have I done? Like, where was my energies lost? How did I only close 1 deal last year when I closed 4 the year before? What did I do differently? Maybe I deal chased. Maybe I did this, or maybe I lost a transaction manager and I didn't realize how important that piece was to me, right? So maybe I need to spend a couple of weeks or a month getting that piece back in place so I can go do what I do, right? And I feel like there's a lot of that where we've got a lot of folks who are inexperienced, or you've got one person experienced coming in together with different people, but they haven't really worked and gelled together and reflected.
It does, Rahul. And unfortunately, we're getting close on time, but just a few more questions.
Sure.
What's the number one thing someone can do right now to improve their syndication business from your standpoint or experience?
Talk to people who've done this before and take their advice. Oftentimes, and again, I say this with the ultimate caveat, these are all entrepreneurs listening from another entrepreneur, so you're going to say, the hell with what you say, I'm going to do with what I'm going to do. But what I always say is in this business, we're fortuitous in the fact that we have no skin in the game to give you the wrong advice. My skin in the game is to give you the right advice, right? I mean, so folks that have done multiple deals with us is because they don't like what we always have to say. They don't agree with it. They feel that they can overcome that. But my challenge back to you is listen to that advice, because you're paying for it. Otherwise, don't pay for it. Just do it yourself. And second, learn from it, because it's there to help you, if that makes sense. It's not my $2 million on the risk, it's yours. So why am I trying to walk you out of doing a deal? Because I don't have any reason not to. Does that make sense? I got all the reason for you to go do the deal. So that's my theory, is making sure you find people who know what they're doing genuinely, and people who are going to challenge you, because there are a lot of yes people along the way that you already have. Brokers, lenders, they're all yes, it's a great deal. It's perfect. Don't worry about the construction. It's coming, XYZ. So find someone that you can trust and listen to them. You're not gonna like what they have to say always, but listen to them.
And that's why we're hiring you, right? We can't be an expert in every particular point or part of this business. So that's why we hire experts like yourself.
But I think there's an important distinction to that. I think people hire a lawyer, they don't spend the time to understand why and what they're advising you to do.
That's a good point.
So there are changes to OAs, and it's like, well, whatever the lender requires, or that's not what you really need to understand those. And that's why I say take a moment, regardless of, this is my advice to anyone who's listening to this, wherever you are, pause. Take a 1 week pause and go back and look at what you've done. Are you doing all of those at 100%? Because if you're not, you don't need to worry about the next deal. You could just raise your portfolio right there. From 90 to 100, you've got millions of dollars of possibilities right there that you already have, right? So why are you focused on the next one, if that makes sense? So I think that people hire the expert, but they don't spend enough time to understand what they're required to do and what they're asking to do. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Rahul, what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
I would, in my opinion, the way we've set this up is we're transparent and honest. So I'm going to shoot it to you straight. And I've had folks fire us because they said, well, because they don't like what they hear or what they have to hear or what's being said or the realities of it is. But I think for us, it's those folks who just like that have checked and evaluated how have they gotten good advice along the way? Has it helped them grow? Those folks have continued to come back to us, because it's tough conversations that you have to have in order to progress, and you have to hire the expert and lean on them, but you also have to understand you have those tough conversations for a reason. I have no reason to anger you, right? Tell you this is not going to work. It doesn't do me any benefit. You can hire another yes man. So I think for us, we've never really been that just yes man. Yes, sir, I'll get it done. Even though if it's not the right thing for you, I'll tell you my opinion, kicking and screaming, and you're almost going to be looking for another person, if that makes sense, in some instances. But if you really stop to reflect on it, you're like, man, that was good advice.
Yes, I like that. And how do you give back?
So you mean charity-wise?
Yes.
Or
anyway.
So lots of things. And my number one belief is in education. So we spend lots of time, like I said, without plugging in your own name, what you're doing, just give people good advice. Go listen to it wherever it is you go. I love education and educating folks. But most importantly, we're involved in two pretty big charities, with Leukemia Lymphoma Society in San Antonio, Texas. We're a big part of their Maine Woman of the Year campaign. And we're also just recently made a pretty strong commitment to our local law school. So, and then I'm a part of a nonprofit angel fund to help bring new startup companies to San Antonio and accelerate them. So those are the things, and other than that, family time. So
nice. Rahul, you've been a great guest. You've provided so much great content, help educate us today, and just helping make sure our deals are structured correctly. And we understand, really, instead of thinking backwards about it, making sure we have some of these things in place, especially with the lender beforehand, before we have that deal and it's crunch time. Thank you so much. Tell the listeners how they can learn more about you and get in touch with you.
Sure. You can go to www.patel, Patel, Gaines, GAINES.com. You can shoot me an email as well at info@patelgains.com. Or you can just, my website's at Rahul, RAHULB, Patel.com. So, but if you ever just Google me, search for us. If you ever have any questions, if you're looking for a deal in a in a state that we're not in, happy to help you point you in the right direction. But most importantly, really make sure that you find somebody who is going to be your quote unquote partner, not just your lawyer when you go through these deals.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rahul. I appreciate the listeners being with us today. Also, I hope you will go to LifeBridge Capital and connect with me as well. I'd love to talk to you and help you any way I can. Go to our Facebook group, the Real Estate Syndication Show, where we can all learn from experts like Rahul and grow our business together and have them structured the best we can. So we will talk to each of you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.